Welcome all. I'm Greg from Greg's Tutoring NYC. I'm back at you again with another poem. So I'm doing a poetry series. I'll put a link at the bottom here. First of all, my email is at the bottom there. I'll replace it with a link to the series. So I'm doing a series that has done about analysis of about a dozen poems so far. It's in GregsTutoringNYC.com/SHSAT dash poetry. All right. So I'm using the SHSAT handbooks. I'm also linking this with the Hunter College High School exam as well. Those are the two focuses of this, but this can be used for other exams and even non-exam work, which is exploring poetry. Poetry is an area where a lot of students cringe at, and I'm bad at poetry and all these kind of comments like that. So I'm just trying to explore it to make people more comfortable and at ease with it and to understand it further. There's a lot of different stuff that kind of happens here. All right, so um, let's jump into this. Okay, so we're gonna look at Twilight, which is this is coming from the 2016 New York State exam, from the grade 6 exam. Um, so the some of these exams have a range of literacy aptitude that they're checking. So normally the two exams I mentioned, the SHSAT and the Hunter College High School exam, are exams a student would take in grade 8. So that's kind of the center of it all. And they'll go lower, grade 6 and 7. There might be some passages there about that, grade 8, and then maybe even grade 9 and 10. And also, on top of the complexity of the passage, in this case, the poem, it's about the questions. So you can have really a simple passage with hard questions. You can have a hard passage with simple questions and everything in the middle. So that's kind of what we're exploring here. And we're going to always try to take a literary perspective on this, even though I'm showing you something from an exam. I'm always focusing on thinking things through, so we can get down to where we need to be. So again, we're looking at Twilight by Christina Rossetti. So sometimes we can use a hint from the actual title. Many of you should know what Twilight is. Twilight is dealing with things like the sunset and things like that. So dusk, dawn, there's words like that that you guys need to know. So technically this vocabulary is level. And again, this was from the grade 6 exam. So people taking the SHSAT and the Hunter College High School exam kind of really should know this at this level, okay? If not, you kind of have to figure it out. All right, so that's the problem. With the literature, you have to rip it apart and figure it out. So before we actually look at the words here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think we have 12 stanzas, if you will. They're poetic paragraphs, okay? And if we look at further, so the author is splitting it up into pieces like that for some reason. So that's part of our detective work when we're reading the poem. We have to rip it apart and figure it out using some of this literary devices to manifest what's happening here. All right, so we can also look at stuff like rhyming. So a lot of poems rhyme. So we have eventide, side. Those two guys rhyme, and then sun, done. So if you notice, wood, rud, bow. Now that's bo. That's pronounced bow. All right, when we get to that, we'll talk about it. And if you notice this last thing here, bide, side, eventide, food, brood, wood. So there's the rhyming may not be perfectly, but that's the thing. So we have two lines that rhyme: close, rose, moon, soon, and then crows rhymes with the first two again. All right, so let me get rid of some of that because we're going to be doing other notations to it. Repetition is a common thing that happens in a poem. We can see that the little stanzas are kind of just smaller thoughts, perhaps, without reading it yet. They're not giant stanzas, and there's probably a methodic thing going on here that the author's doing. All right, so let's try to jump into this and see what we can figure out. So, oh, pleasant eventide. So that's a word that you probably don't know. So this is really dealing with the evening time, if you will. Okay, clouds on the western side. Interesting. Uh, grow gray and grayer, hiding the warm sun. Okay, the author is using a colon there. The bees and birds, their happy labors done, seek their close nests and bide. All right, so it seems to be using, this might be from Britain because it's using a British spelling. That's something you guys should know, color, COLOUR and stuff like that. So this labors is the work that the birds and the bees have done during the daytime. So let's try to figure out what's happening right here. Okay, because that's kind of critical as we jump into this. Otherwise, we're kind of at a loss in a way. So, um, the author's saying that the evening has come and it's kind of a happy time. So, clouds on the western side. So, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Okay, and grows grayer and grayer, hiding the warm sun. So, this is talking about sunset. It's just a pleasant evening with a sunset happening. Okay, and the birds and the bees are getting their end of day task done, so to speak. Okay, um, and seek their close nest, so they're coming home as well, right? So the day is ending, just like we do sometimes. Gonna come home for dinner, chill out, and do some work, and go to sleep, and all this kind of stuff like that. Okay, so let's see if there's any consistency between each stanza involving that kind of a thing. All right, so screened in the leafy wood, the stock doves sit and brood. The very squirrels leap from bough to bough. So this is bough to bough, like the trees from tree branch to tree branch. But lazily pauses and settles now where he once stored his food. So we went from the birds and bees doing something. We have the doves doing something. And again, if you notice, they're just sitting there and chilling out. Okay. The squirrel is busy eating, so to speak. Right. But it's doing it lazily and slowing, and it actually pauses. It stops and settles now where it once stored its food. So it might be that it found maybe a bunch of leaves to spend the evening at. Okay, so we have the squirrel here. Okay, so we have the doves, the squirrel. Um, One by one, the flowers close. So again, that's what happens at evening time. Lily and dewy rose. Dewy means it's kind of getting moist from the end of the day. The humidity is gathering on the rose, um, shutting their tender petals from the moon. So this is a little poetic, um, but the sun is not beating on the rose anymore, so it's closing up to go to sleep, so to speak. Okay. The grasshopper, so it brings an animal in. So we noticed they're mentioning animals, but they also mentioned the flowers. So things are preparing for evening time or maybe sleep time. Let's see where this kind of goes. Um, and still are the noisy crows. So the crows are caw caw through the day, but now they're just chilling out. They're relaxing. Okay, so there's a consistency happening already through all this discussion. Um, and could it be that the author is just going to meander from animal to animal or plant to plant, giving you a little summary of what each animal is doing at the end of the day? Um, we'll have to see. This is a 2-page passage with lots of details. So the dormouse dormouse squats and eats choice little dainty bits. Okay, each choice little dainty bit. So it's eating just little tiny stuff beneath the spreading root of the broad lime. So it's also chilling at the end of the day, munching on. It sounds like the roots of the lime tree. Okay, nibbling his fill, he stops from time to time and listens where he sits. So again, same kind of thing here. It's focusing on the dormouse, but it's talking about just end of the day. It's chilling. It's kind of just reflecting. The sun is setting. We know that already. And the animals are kind of just chilling out and relaxing at the end of the day. Um, far from the lowings come of cattle driven home. So Lowings is a word you may not know. That's actually the mooing sound and so on. The onomatopoeia of that, right? So this is kind of an unfair word. I said this was from a grade 6 exam. Most adults don't even know what that word is, so that's kind of an unfair thing. This will happen in any kind of passage where there will be a word there. Um, Usually we can figure out vocabulary through context, but I'll be honest with you, this one is kind of really pressing it, okay? Far from the lowings come of cattle-driven homes. So that's a little elusive. So that's a bit cryptic right here. Okay, and if it's the only thing you don't understand, that's kind of good. All right. From farther still, the wings bring fitfully of the vast continual murmur of the sea. So murmur is the connection to the lowings, where the sea is making a noise. There might be waves, might be more windier, things are splashing, and there's whoosh, kind of a thing there. Now loud, now almost dumb. So again, it's even personifying, if you will, that the wind is calming down for the end of the day too. Now we know that's not really how wind works, but the author is staying consistent with this theme here um, about what's happening. We can almost draw a line here and kind of figure out what's happening in the poem already. Now let's not draw a line though, because there's still another page, and the author might change and start talking about something else. All right, so we're trying to look for climaxes. We're trying to look for turning points. We're trying to look to see if the author is going to start using some other literary device to spell what they're doing. But so far, the author is towing the line and just staying consistent. The author is just snapshotting a thing or an animal, right? So we have animals, we have plants, and we now have the wind as well, right? So it's talking about basically end of day things, all right? Uh, the gnats whirl in the wind, the evening gnats, right? So again, it's hitting home. This is the end of the day. And there the owl, oops, broad his eyes. So that means opens, and wings to sail for prey. So the owl is nocturnal, right? It's mostly a night animal. So it's going to start looking for something to eat. The bat wakes, the same kind of thing, and the shellless snail comes forth clammy and bare. So think of like a slug kind of situation, where during the daytime it's too hot for the snail to not have the shell on, and when it's a little more chillier during the night and without the sun beating on it, it can be shellless. All right, so we're moving. It seems like we're moving a little away from evening and actually into nighttime now. All right, but let's see. Is this chronologically going to go through the whole night and end up in the morning? Let's see. That's something we need to think about and look at. So again, so far we have a lot of consistency. Hark, that's the nightingale, telling the self same tale. Her song told when this ancient earth was young. So echoes answered when her song was sung in the wooded vale. So that's valley. All right. So the in the forest or wherever they're at, um, there's a nightingale singing. I might be wrong, but I think it's only the male nightingale who sings. So it's talking about her. I don't know if that's a technicality. There's an error there, or I'm wrong. But that might be something I should Google after this. All right, so it's also talking about this going on. So the implication is that the nightingale will be awake during the night, chirping and all this other stuff, or screaming, or whatever it does. I'm not actually familiar with the actual sound a nightingale makes. Nightingale, sorry. Uh, we call it love and pain, the passion of her strain. So there is a little difference right here. Okay, the author's moving away from just describing the animal and the activity, or the plant and the activity, or the wind and the activity. It's the author's putting a little meaning here. We call it love and pain, the passion of her strain. And yet we little understand or know, right? So there's something going on here about the meaning of something. Uh, why should it not rather joy that so throbs in each throbbing vein? So the nightingale's affiliated with love and things like that. So, and maybe heartbreak, or something like that. So, right. So again, this is kind of pushing it. And again, this was a grade 6 passage. So this is even pushing it for me to understand what's happening here. And again, it leans on being cryptic. We really have to kind of stop. Don't just zoom over these kind of things and say, I don't know what's going on. Spend a few more seconds and really try to make sense of it. It's not important to get it 100%, but it's important not to get it 0%. So you want to get somewhere in the middle there and just try to figure out where is the poet going? Why are they mentioning this? The author definitely broke the flow for this stanza here. Okay. Um, and separate herds the deer. So they're going back to the animals. Lie. Here the bucks and here the does. And by its mother sleeps the fawn. So we have a bunch of deer asleep. And they're asleep at this point. So I think it is transpiring from evening to sometime during the nighttime at this point. Okay. So through all the hours of night again until the dawn. So it seems like now they're leaning on morning time at this point. They sleep forgetting fear. So they're hidden in the forest somewhere. They're comfortable. They can sleep without fear of a bear or something like that. All right. Um, the hare sleeps where it lies, with wary half closed eyes. So the hare is asleep, but it's kind of semi-conscious, trying to keep aware of what's going on. The cock has ceased to crow, the hen to cluck, so the chickens and the roosters and all that have gone to sleep as well. Only the fox is out. Aha! So the fox is trying to get a meal too, just like the owl and the bats did before. Some heedless duck or chicken to surprise. So the fox is going to sneak around the farm or whatever the case may be and see if it can get something to eat while the other animals are chilling out. And again, that might be why the hare is half asleep. The fox might also try to eat the hare, right? So there's that. Okay. Remote eats stars. So there's a kind of a change in the pace again here. Um, so we should notice that. Remote, each single star comes out. Now, there's a thing with poetry that we kind of like to stop at the end of each line and read it the way the author gave it. That's called enjambment. Um, and that's okay. We can get meaning out of it that way. But we should also read poems as full sentences sometimes. So, remote, each single star comes out. That's a thought. Each single star comes out till they are all shining brightly, right? That whole three lines, 51, 52, and 53, we should read together to understand it, not just in pieces, but as a unit. Okay. So each single star comes out till they are all shining. How the dew falls damp. Okay, so the sunset dew is now so much dew that it's kind of getting soaking wet. Now, it's not talking about it's not raining particularly. It's not foggy, but by morning the dew is accumulated enough that it might be dripping off the flowers and things like that. And the bottom with the leaves, that the bottom of the forest has leaves. They may be all even wet at that point. All right, and that's part of when the sun rises. It there might often be a morning mist. That's from burning off the dew that accumulated during the night. While close at hand, the glowworm lights her lamp, or twinkles from afar. So the author's being cute here. They're relating a twinkling star, if you will, to the glow, the phosphorescence or whatever that the glowworm is glowing with. Okay. So there is the author took a little sidebar here, if you will. Um, but there's not much really deep going on here. So, but the author is trying to just fill up the experience of this nighttime, nighttime, and looks like it's moving it to dawn. So, and then finally, I believe this is the last paragraph. Let's make There we go. It's the last paragraph, the last stanza. So evening now, but evening now is done. So sunset has definitely happened. We talked about things going to sleep. So night has definitely happened. As much as if the sun, day giving, had risen in the east. So this goes full circle to the beginning there, when it was talking about the clouds and the darkness in the west, right on line 2. All right. So the author has almost created a story arc, dragging it back full circle, if you will. All right. So it sounds like it's and the sun rises in the east, so to speak, right? We know it's the revolution of the thing, but we can look and say, oh, it's coming up on the east side of where we are. For a night has come, and the great calm has ceased. Okay, so evening came. Everybody kind of got back home, if you will. All the animals, the flowers closed up, all these kind of things like that, and everybody was sleeping. And if we look at it, the great calm has ceased. The name of the poem was Twilight Calm. So this is sunset calm, and then the night, and everybody's asleep. So it's kind of coming full circle again, almost a story arc again. That the great calm has ceased. That means kind of the night's over. Okay, and the quiet sands have run. All right, so this is really pushing it. It sounds like to me, could be wrong. There's an hourglass filled with sand, and the sand has trickled down. So this is really metaphoric, anecdotal, simile-ish, all these kind of things like that. So the quiet sands have run. So it's just talking about a peaceful evening here, and all the animals in the earth, if you will, because it tied into the plants and it tied into even the wind, and things like that have run their course, and the night is done with. I'm not convinced it's particularly morning here. It's a little too cryptic to me to figure that out. But that's kind of what we're going here. Um, so if we kind of look at what seems to be happening here, this is just like a survey of the different things happening in this area. I keep calling it a forest. It does not need to particularly be a forest. So the topic is basically exploring each of these kind of things going on here. All right, and the majority focuses on the animals too, and that really just seems to be related to what the main idea is. The topic is surveying these different things. What about them? They're kind of getting ready to for the evening, and then it talks about some of them being asleep. So actually, what is happening during the evening? All right. So, um, and we don't want to necessarily go too deep on some of this because we don't know what the questions are. That's one of the idiosyncrasies. It's almost unfortunate that when we're looking at literature, um, we want to explore it for what it is, but at the same time, if we're trying to answer questions, we do need to also explore those and be centric on those, right? Um, and there's kind of two levels at it. One is just taking the poem for what it is, if there and assuming there's no questions. And the other is that when you do have an exam that has questions, it kind of gets upside downy in the sense that um, you're being graded on your answers to the questions and not reading the passage. Now, the two are related, so you just can't answer the questions without reading the passage. But at the end of the day, it's about that. Now, there's often three levels of reading comprehension that are tied into things like this. One is the reading comprehension of the passage, ripping it apart and understanding it, doing the analytics, and making assumptions and thought processes about as reading it, as we just did. There's also the reading comprehension of the question, right? It doesn't matter if you have a hard or easy passage. If you can't understand the question, you need to comprehend that too, right? And then all the choices, A, B, C, D, or A, B, C, D, E, or even if it's an open-ended write-in question where you have to write the answer as an essay or something like that, or write a sentence in a response, um, you still need to understand the choices that they're giving you and the choices that could be possible. The reading comprehension, generally speaking, has three layers. It's going to be the passage, the questions, and the choices. Because you could read the passage and understand it completely at least some level, and then you get these super deep, complicated questions. All right, so bam. All right, so we're going to do the questions in a second. Alrighty now, so let me get myself set up. Let's put some questions on the bottom part of the screen. Okay, there we go. All right, let's see. Let's get rid of that. And we'll put my email back at the end. At the end, I'll bring my email back. Okay, so let's see. Is that fitting? Yes, it is. All right. Whoops. So what does most of the poem describe? So, I don't really like that the state is asking the question this way. I would prefer they ask what is the main idea. Okay. But we can kind of still get there. Let's just try to rip this apart and make sense of it. I just spoke about touched on what the main idea was about. It was basically about the end of stuffing, things preparing for the night, if you will. All right. So the sounds of evening, absolutely, it talks about those. So those are definitely issues that occurred. So it definitely described that. And almost preparing for the nightfall, so I spent a lot of time preparing for that, talking about that. So we're going to double check that. Creatures hunting for food at night. Yep, absolutely. It was talked about. I talked about the owl. I talked about the squirrel. I talked about the bat. I talked about the fox. Right. So there's certainly that happened. Enough. In fact, if we triple check this and double check that, then the sounds of evening were the least amount I talked about. The most I talked about was B. And then D was the way the weather changed at sunset. So it didn't really do this. So if we make that DA, this a double check, this 4 and this 3, B is the winner there. Now, I said I'd rather they did a main idea question here. So this is not a main idea question, though. I need to be clear that I'm not trying to say that's what 22 means. Okay, it just says what does most of the poem describe. So this is about what by volume, what was the most talked about thing. Okay, main idea often is the most talked about thing, but not always. There's lots of passages where something could be talked about a lot, and it could just be an example. All right, so that's why this is not a main idea question, even though I'd like to use main idea to try to kind of segue through it, because if the poem didn't talk about something, it may not be the main idea, but at the same time, it could be. So this gets elusive and cryptic-y. And it might be why they did that with 22 here. So, but they're asking really what's going on the most, right? What is most of the poem describe? It talks about animals getting ready for going to sleep, really, the end of the day. All right, so that's not too bad. Read lines 1 through 3 of the poem. So they're giving it here in boldface. Oh, pleasant evening tide, clouds, and so again, this is talking about the sunset itself. Which words best describe the tone that the poet creates at the beginning of the poem? All right, whoops, hold on. I didn't scroll this up. All right, let's see. That is not showing properly. So let's see, can I squeeze this down? Will that work? Nope, not enough. Ah. We can make it a little bigger still. And a little bigger still. All right, so yeah, you know what? I'm gonna get rid of the question number and try to fit it that way. Yeah, that's a little better, and you guys could see it better too. So, which words best describe the tone that the poet creates at the beginning of the poem? Concern for warmth? No, this nothing really in the story is relating to that, so it's definitely not A, and it's definitely not the tone. Surprised alarm at the day's end. So no, every day ends. This is almost a silly answer if we didn't even read the poem. Okay. So and there's nothing up here. It's getting grayer. It doesn't mean like a storm is approaching or something like that. Oh, all of a sudden a storm popped up or anything like that. It's not that. Uh, Enthusiasm for that time of the day. So yes, it's a happy time. It's pleasant, right? And the whole setting, the whole poem has been casual. Nothing was really excited, and it's almost just imagine if you had a camera creating a cinematic experience. the camera's just slowly panning through the forest or wherever it is, and it's just stopping at each little thing that happens. Stopping for the squirrel, stopping for the owl, stopping for the fox, stopping for the whatever. And it's just kind of doing this casual. So the tone is not really excited too much, but is enthusiastic. Okay, so I like that. And then D says disapproval of the weather pattern. So again, we get no indication that there's a storm coming. And if it's just day to day, every day has a sunset. So um, so then C makes the most sense here. 24. Let's see if we can get this guy to fit. Well, let's read the question first. So read 6 and 7 of the poem, then read the dictionary entry for screen. So let's see if we can get this to fit. Yeah, there we go. All right. So it says to read line 6 and 7 of the poem. So let's go do that. So line 6 and 7 are here. Okay, and that sentence starts at, let's read from 5, even though it's the previous stanza. So we have the birds and the bees wrapping up, so we're cool there. Screened in the leafy wood, okay, the stock dove sits and brood. The very squirrel leaps, yada, 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 okay? So we seem to have the dove being constrained in some manner, all right? So which definition matches? So we have to provide with a means to exclude insects. So we could argue the dove is eating bugs or something, but that's not there. To shelter or conceal from view. So I like that one because it's evening, and just like the deer were comfortable sleeping, the dove is going to find somewhere comfortable and protective to sleep as well. All right, so that seems to be reasonable. To separate or sort. So the dove is being separated wherever it's end up as sleeping in a birdhouse, on a branch of a tree, whatever the case may be. It's done that, but if we go into, it says screened in the leafy wood. So the dove is trying to get the protection of this leafy wood area. All right, so it's not just separating. It's more like two, sheltering and being hidden from view, right? And then 4, to give a method to determine a suitability for a task. So that's like screening. If normally you were taking a test to be screened and determined what grade you got or something like that. So that's not 4. So we're really talking about B there. Okay. All right. 25. Let me see how this lines up, because I think we can expand back out the screen here. Not really. Okay, so what? Can all that fit? Okay, there we go there. Which line provides the best evidence that events in nature are repeated over many years? All right, so this is one of the things that poems do often is they deal with cyclical things like seasons, the circle of life, right? Parents have children, children have children, uh, people will die off at some point, things like that. Okay. This is dealing with one day, if you will. Every day there's a sunset and a sunrise. Every day the animals are going to go to sleep. Um, Seasons, winter, spring, fall, summer, winter, spring, fall, summer, right? All these kind of things like that. So, and this happens in a lot of poetry. It could even be love. You fall in love, you get married, you have children. Just again, and it's tied into the circle of life and so on as well too. All right, so if you notice, every answer is a quote. So every answer has to be true in and of itself. It's not like if there's a quote here that's not from the passage, then it can't apply, right? So which line provides the best evidence that events in nature are repeated over in many years? So the very squirrel leaves from bough to bough. No, it's just chilling out and bouncing around, and it eventually goes to sleep or whatever, and where it stored its food. So that doesn't seem cyclical. Now you might be sitting out at your porch and watch this happening every night, but that's not proof that that happens. This is just one one iteration, one instance of the squirrel doing that. So it seems like if A was the answer, something's messed up. Okay. B, nibbling his fill, he stops from time to time and listens to where he sits. So again, we all eat a couple of times a day, all things like that. But again, in and of itself, this is pretty much just standing there in isolation, just like A did as well. C, hark, that the nightingale telling the same self-tale, her song told when Phil's ancient earth was young. So this is implying that the nightingale has been singing the same song for a long time. All right, so that is evidence that something's repeated. That every night the nightingale sings this song. So C seems like it's the answer. Let's make sure it's not D. Through all the hours of the night until the dawn, they sleep, forgetting fear. All right, so again, this is one instance of it. It's not indicating us any repetition or cyclical nature to that. So 25, it's pretty clearly C. Okay. Okay, 26. Which line from the poem best demonstrates a gradual change that occurs during the evening? So this touches on where I said it kind of started out with the sunset. Eventually talked about the animal sleeping. And then towards the end, it's either finally morning or close to morning kind of a thing. I feel the poem kind of leaves us there. So we don't kind of know about that too clearly. So let's try to rip this apart and see what we can get. So A says 11 through 13. So let me change the color of the pen so it's clear what I'm trying to highlight here. Let's go with purple. So it says 11 through 13. So this deals with one by one the flowers close. So it's almost like as time is going, the flowers are closing up. Lily and dewy rose shutting their tender petals from the moon. So as we go from sunset into the actual moon, now we all know that, well, you should know, the moon can actually appear in the night, but this is kind of metaphorical. We're doing that transpiring, we're transitioning from one thing to the next. So as it gets dark, we can kind of see the moon better, even though in the daylight, the moon might be up there for us to see. We kind of notice it better in the nighttime. So if we go back to the question, which demonstrates a gradual change that occurs during the evening. So that sounds gradual. So I like A. Okay, B is 16 through 20. So we're gonna have that whole thing there. That the dormouse is just squatting. It's eating stuff from the lime tree, so it's not moving. It stays there, if you will. Now we could say it's whittling away at the lime tree roots, but that's not evidence that something is changing during the evening. Okay, the dormouse is still just sitting there eating the lime tree or whatever. Nibbling his fill, he stops from time to time and listens to where he sits. So again, nothing's happening here. The dormouse is eating and listening. So it seems like the answer. That's not good evidence for that. C is 44 through 45. So that's going to be here. Okay. It's talking about the deer sleeping. And they're just sleeping. It lays out that there's the mother, the father, and the child deer. And there's really nothing else going on there. It does say through all the hours of night, but it's not saying from sunset to midnight to 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. It's just making it en masse. So it's just making a general statement. So I'm still favoring A. I'll be honest with you, I'm not leaping up and down about A. And then there's D, which is 54. 54 and 55? That's it. Just two lines. All right. So we have these guys here. So while close at hand, the glowworm lights her lamp or twinkles from afar. All right. So again, nothing eventful here. The glowworm's glowing. Yay, right? Nothing's really there. So A is the answer. And let's go back to 11 through 13 again. one by one, right? Again, if we did that thing with the cameras panning, the camera could move from flower to flower, right? It's not particularly going fast, um, but it's happening. And then we have the thing where we're finally showing the moon. So the evening made that metamorphosis, if you will, from daylight to nighttime. All right. So again, nothing is really ecstatic here, but A is unequivocally the answer, and it's the fact that it's gradual. Right? They're not even saying, man, this is going to be the most amazing evidence you're ever going to find. There's just this gradual occurrence that happens. All right. And then 22, and let me just make sure this is lined up. Yeah, it is. Wait, where am I? 22. Sorry, 27. Which word best describes most of the evening activity mentioned in the poem? So this could be vocabulary or vocabulary in context. I'd like to think this is the kind of question we can cover up and guess the answer. The problem is we can't always overthink what the test writers are doing. So 27 can get kind of hard to figure out and determine and all those kind of things like that. Okay. All right. So let's just take them one at a time. Busy. Okay, I buy that. There's nothing extraordinarily busy happening going on like this. The animals, a bear is chasing the chicken or something like that, or there's nothing eventful happening per se. But it's busy. There's a lot going on here. There's a 2-page poem talking about all the activity going on. And you might say, what activity? They're going to sleep. Isn't that inactivity? Yeah, but it's still happening. Lonely. Um, uh, that's probably pushing it. It's just exploring each animal and each thing, the wind, the flowers, the moonlight, whatever the case may be. So that doesn't seem to be where they're going. Which word best describes most of the evening? All right, and it seems to be if there's enough animals and things going on to distribute that lonely is not it, and the way lonely is contradicting the busyness of A, not particularly directly, but there's an indirect thing there that they're opposite answers. Okay, strained. So strained would also be something stressful. Something bad might be occurring again. There's no bear chasing the rabbit or anything like that here. So they're all just the whole thing was casual, fairly relaxed. The forest is going to sleep for the night, so there's nothing bad here. Even the beginning, where some students may get lost in the whole passage, and the great clouds in the beginning. Again, they may think a storm is happening, and despite all the 2 pages contradicting that, uh, they might get lost and think all the animals are trying to protect themselves from a storm or something. And that's not what's happening. So there's no stress, there's no strain, there's no real drama in the story. It's almost too antiseptic. It's calm. It's not really anything happening. It's like, why did the author make this 2 pages kind of a thing, right? But the author was trying to hit that. And cooperative. Um, so this one's interesting, okay, because um there's certainly not uncooperative behavior here. Like, again, the bear's not chasing the hare, and the chicken's not fighting with the rooster, and whatever the case may be, the, the nothing's attacking anything else or whatever. So from that sense, it's not uncooperative, but that doesn't mean it's cooperative. Now, the deer, the family of, or the herd of deer, yeah, they all slept together, and um, but when we take in isolation some of the stuff I talked about, like the squirrel, the squirrel, or the glowworm or whatever, that's pretty much in solitude. Which, by the way, is where it gets back to the lonely aspect. But nothing here is like something is so lonely and it's sad or something like that. It's not going there. So yeah, and again, D has that same kind of flavor to it, where even though there's nothing uncooperative, that doesn't mean it's cooperative. And again, if we go do that pan where the camera's panning from scene to scene, to animal to animal, to plant to plant, they're just all preparing for nightfall. So it's not uncooperative or cooperative. So D seems to go out, and it's just talking about the occurrences that are happening during the night there. All right, so that would just be A. It's busy. Again, I'm not ecstatic about this answer, but it's unequivocally the only answer that makes sense. And then 28. Let's try to get 28 there. Which line best shows that the night is different from the evening? Aha. We talked about there was a point where it was clear the sunset was already done, and another point where it seemed like the night was close to being done. All right, so this one hopefully is clear. So we almost know if we go to lines 1 through 5, that's the beginning of the poem. So and it hasn't quite really touched on the eveningness, right? It hasn't really touched on the twilightness yet. It's just setting us up, right? It throws in the birds and the bees part, but we're kind of not sure what's happening in the first stanza yet. So A just makes no sense. And by the way, if this is chronological, it seems like D might be the answer. Just because at that point we've gone through the whole night, if you will, with uh, this experience that the author is panning through. All right, 11 through 15 is going to be these same lines here again. The one by one the flowers close, shutting their thing with the moon. The grasshoppers don't move, and that's weird because the grasshoppers are not even chirping. That noise grasshoppers make. It says they're still. Okay, but not so soon are still the noisy crows. Okay, so there's things like that going on. So that doesn't seem to be it either. Night is different from the evening. Now there is an implication that the animals are starting to chill out. So that semi is an answer. So we'll tilde that because could it be the best answer? We're not really sure. 26 through 30 is going to be this paragraph about the gnats. The gnats were on the air, the evening gnats, and there the owl opens his eyes, and the owl is going to start hunting. The same with the bat's going to start hunting, and the clown comes out. So this is a difference, that they were asleep during the day and now they're going to be awake, whereas some of the other animals were awake during the day and now they're going to be asleep. So that also shows that there's a difference from the evening, and that's kind of maybe okay. And then we have 56 through 60 is the end. Evening now is done. And we're talking about the sun rising and stuff like that. And night has come and gone, right? The great comma ceased. It's the next day and stuff like that. So which best describes that night is different from the day. So we're going to lean on D. A is definitely not the answer. B and C include some of that occurrences that are going on, which shows that night is different from the evening, right? And it's telling us evening now is done. So it's finished describing that. We can use that as our segue into that thing and give us D. Again, I'm not jumping up and down about D, but it's the only one that makes the most sense. I don't like the notion of best in a lot of these questions either, generally speaking. That's normally what happens on these kind of things with these test questions and so on, and that's where we need to go. All right, so that is the last question. Let me get rid of this. If you guys need to hit me up, I'm at GregsTutoringNYC at gmail.com. So again, we did about a dozen of these poems. Probably going to do 6 to a dozen more, and usually involving maybe the New York State test or other sources, because there's no more examples from the SHSAT or from Hunter. We want to explore stuff and just give this a good shake through. Again, most students don't like poetry, feel they do poorly in poetry. Some actually do poorly in poetry. So we're just trying to rip these guys apart and talk them through. Peace.